Hello, and welcome to the Argyle HR Leadership Forum. My name is Eric Wallace with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions during the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we'll address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Today, we have Gautam Patadkar, Vice President of Culture and Coaching at Bobby Jones Links. We're excited to have Gautam with us for a keynote presentation called Improve Performance with Two-Way Coaching. Welcome, Gautam. Over to you.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me. It's an honor for me to be a part of this. I really do appreciate maybe you thinking a little bit outside the box. I work for a small company in Alpharetta, Georgia called Bobby Jones Links. And we're a golf management company, which maybe typically doesn't hit, presentations like this. So I really appreciate you taking a risk and inviting me to do this. I remember when you sent me, the invitation on LinkedIn, I actually saw it for the first time and I said to myself, this couldn't be for me. This must be some kind of LinkedIn spam that I got. But I ended up looking up Argyle and seeing that it was real. And I said, he couldn't have made a mistake because I'm probably one of the only people with this name in the whole entire world. So I said, let's do this. So like I said, I really appreciate you doing this, and for us to be a part of this. You have some amazing sponsors and a lot of big companies that work with you, and so we appreciate you taking the risk. I probably have a lot to say on this topic, so I will try to be as quick as I can, otherwise I'll probably go on forever. But I have two very simple goals to try to accomplish. The first one is for everybody at some point to grab a pen and take a note, because there's nothing that I say that you haven't heard before, but what it is maybe you're hearing something slightly different than what you've heard in the past. So it's very simply just taking a note and saying, yes, I heard something different. This might spur a different conversation of how to do something a little bit differently. And my second goal is just to make you smile, maybe make you laugh a little. HR is very serious. It's tough. I am not from the HR world necessarily, but if I can figure out a way to make you smile and maybe make you laugh a little, then I would say, mission accomplished for that. A very short table of contents here. Obviously a welcome. I think it's important for me to give you a little bit of background as to where I come from and what my industry is all about. Because I think if you work for big, huge businesses with big, huge names, you're going to be thinking to yourself, well, how does this guy who works for a small company with less than 2,000 employees really going to be able to relate to us? So I think it's important that I do that. I'm going to talk a little bit about a mindset change, which will lead into two-way coaching. I know that all of you will be waiting for what are the ways to do two-way coaching, or how could I do this better? But I think there's a mindset change that happens first. I'll conclude with overcoming power differentials, and I'll conclude there. But I also want to start by saying, and this, hopefully you smile when you hear this, nothing that I say for the next 20, 25 minutes is going to be intelligent. Nothing that I say is mathematical. Nothing that I say is going to be, holy cow, we would have never thought that. But everything that I say is going to be emotional. And the reason I say that to you is because when you're dealing with people and you're dealing with things like two-way coaching, that is emotional. There's no math that tells you how to deal with people. There's no protractor or ruler that's going to tell you how to do this job. Everything that I say is going to be very emotional. And I'd like to start with a very simple story. It was back in 2000 when, unfortunately, I lost my job and I was out of work for a few months, and I found a job working at Manatee Memorial Hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida. And believe it or not, the job that I had was I was the AM supervisor of the environmental sciences team. And for those of you that work in the healthcare industry, environmental services is a fancy word for housekeeping. it's a great word for housekeeping, but that's really what it was. And we would show up every single morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, and our shift ended at 2. And, you know, it was there that I learned the value of not leadership, because I was not a leader, I was a supervisor, but I was able to see what the frontline team, the people that are boots on the ground, expect from a leader. So like I said, I do not have a degree in HR. I do not have this great history of human resources, but what I do have is that year that I spent, and then all the years going forward in different capacities, but that year that I spent at Manatee Memorial Hospital taught me so much about what leaders need to do and what the expectations of the frontline team, the boots on the ground team, really want. You cannot start two-way coaching unless both of those two things are ironed out. So just to give you a little bit of background as to the world that I come from, golf, right? I come from the country club business. 66.6 million golfers in the world today. That's a huge number. It grew quite a bit through the pandemic. 3 million are youth golfers under the age of 17. You know, golf is one of the top 5 sports played in the world. Cricket, rugby, tennis, golf is right there in the top 5. 2 million people are employed in the golf industry. And when you think of golf, you think of Tiger Woods. Well, Tiger Woods is not one of the 2 million people employed in the golf industry, right? The people that are actually employed in the golf industry are a lot of people that teach golf. But there's also people that work in the restaurant. There's people that work out on the irrigation on the golf course. There's salespeople that sell you the hats and the balls and the shoes. You have people that teach. We also have the mainstream jobs, right? We have general managers, we have accountants, we have human resources people. We have all those, but we have a different set of workers that work out there in a country club. The golf industry is worth $26.1 billion in total revenues. And the greatest stat of all time is there are more golf courses in the world than there are McDonald's. Go believe that, right? For every McDonald's that you see driving up and down the highway, just imagine there's a golf course right behind it and another quarter of one, because that's how many golf courses are out there in the world. The typical country club from the outside looking in looks just like this, right? It is definitely a world of have and have-nots. If you have the means to do it and you love golf and that type of social life, you join. And there's your fancy family of 5 enjoying a beautiful dinner outside on the patio, and look at the food they eat and the cars that they drive and the golf course. So the country club from the outside looking in looks extremely, extremely fancy. But then here are the people that actually work inside the country clubs, right? You have people that, you know, there's one of our guys making pasta. There's somebody, you know, squeegeeing the fairways after a rainstorm. There's a server. So we actually live in a world which is much more blue collar than what is expected from the outside looking in. It's a minimum wage world. We employ a lot of kids. We employ a lot of seniors, retirees, I should say. It's not fancy on the inside. We wear name tags. We eat lunch behind the counter. A lot of people from the outside looking in will tell you that this does not take a lot of education to be a part of, because you're doing very frontline service kind of work. But we do one thing, and that's obviously fulfill hobbies for people. We bring families together. We are their social life. So the work that we do, although, and I'm not trying to say the work that medical doctors do or that teachers and firemen and policemen do is not important, but the work that we do is galvanizing families, and we create hobbies and we create memories of a lifetime. This is a picture of one of our 2 owners, Steve Willie, and to his right is Stacy Bird. And the correlation I'm trying to make here is that when you hear me talk, I may be coming from a very small industry and speaking to people that are in very big industries, but I'm trying to correlate the two as it comes to the importance of the people. So one of our founders, Steve Willie, he relies on Stacy Bird to come to her job every single day, because she is the one that does the heavy lifting, right? He may be out there selling new business, doing all the great things to grow the company, but without Stacy Bird, none of this goes together. How do I tie those two together? There's Carol Tomei. Carol Tomei is the CEO of UPS, a multi-billion-dollar industry. Everything that gets shipped on a plane, on a train, on a boat, in a car goes through her. But there's Janice Bailey, and Carol Tomei relies on Janice Bailey no differently than Steve Willie relied on Stacy Bird. The difference is I'm not in a multi-billion-dollar industry. I'm in a multi-million-dollar industry, but the correlation is the same. Without those frontline teams, Carol Tomei goes nowhere. So I want to talk a little bit about frontline coaching, because obviously I know that's what everybody showed up to hear. But before I talk about frontline coaching, I have to talk about a simple mindset change. And that goes back to what I talked about at Manatee Memorial Hospital. The two things that have to happen right off the bat is, if you're in the HR world, you have to teach leaders to actually be leaders. You can't just get a business card and your name on a door and all of a sudden you become a leader. There's a lot of people things that have to be solved first. So leaders must be taught to be leaders. Second to that is the frontline guest facing team. Whether you're out there in the field, taking phone calls, wherever it is you are, we have to let them know how valuable they are to the organization. Without that, none of it works. So here are 6 very simple logos. And if we were all in a room together, I would ask all of you as leaders, what do you see? What is it that you see? And I think a lot of you would say, leaders of industry, right? You would say billion-dollar organizations. You would say organizations with lots and lots of people. And that's what a lot of leaders would say. They would say, look at Apple. Apple doesn't even need to show their logo in order for us to recognize who they are. But then I would flip the script on you and I would say, well, what does the frontline team see? What does the rest of your organization see? More than likely, they say the same thing, right? They say big business, they see multi-billion-dollar companies, they see things maybe I'll never be able to afford. They see that. They see Ritz-Carlton and say, if I ever get to sleep on that bed, it's going to be the greatest night of sleep we've ever had. And it's interesting how leaders and frontline team members actually see things the same way. But what we're asking here is, we're hoping that leaders actually see the vision that it took. What vision did Walt Disney have to actually create Disney, right? A leader should see leadership, and leadership of how it is to actually lead people, right? They need to be able to understand they are the leaders of people, and the determination for success. Horst Schulze, when he started Ritz-Carlton, he didn't just walk out and say, we have the greatest hotel ever. It took determination to get to the vision that he set forth. And a customer-facing guest or employee should see, I'm the executor of the vision, right? I'm the concierge of the guest, right? I am going to be the star of their social media. Nobody goes home from Disney World and says, we had a great time. That Walt, he did such a great job. Nobody says Walt, right? What everybody says is, it's the guy in the goofy suit that recognized I was here with my family. He walked across the park, knelt down, and allowed me to take a picture of my family that created memories for life. And the guest-facing team needs to understand that. And then together, right, before we get into the two-way coaching, what needs to happen is the leaders and the people that are underneath that need to understand, what do they actually see when they see these logos? So my favorite logo here is Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson is like a band of brothers and sisters, right? So imagine this if I told you this story. How many of you own a Harley jacket? Maybe a few hands go up. How many of you own a Harley Davidson? Maybe a few hands go up. Would you ever own a Harley jacket if you didn't own a Harley Davidson? Think about it. Would you ever own a Harley jacket if you didn't own a Harley Davidson? Can you imagine walking into one of those bars with your Harley Davidson jacket, and you walk in and you sit down next to the guy with the jacket, the beard, the rubber band, he's got his do-rag on, and he says to you, what kind of ride do you have? And your answer is Nissan Altima. You don't get to wear the Harley Davidson stuff unless you truly own a Harley Davidson. So the same thing with our companies out there in the field. It is a band of brothers and sisters, and before you can ever start two-way coaching, you have to have that band of brothers and sisters relationship. So what is the leader's mindset change? I'm going to try to speed up because obviously I've taken too long here. So you are the they. Leaders need to understand that they are the they. Every single person that's out there representing your company, when something goes wrong or something goes right, either passes the blame to you or gives the credit to you. So if you're in a restaurant and you run out of hamburgers and a guest says, why did you run out of hamburgers? The first thing that the frontline person says is, they ran out. They forgot to buy some. You are the they. Recognize that as a leader, you are the end all do all for the organization of how it moves forward. Listen more. Leaders have to be great listeners. It's not easy for a frontline team member to come up to you and do something. Ask for a raise, ask for a day off, anything that it might be. It's not easy. Listen more. Listen with the intent to listen, not with the intent to win. Turn your cell phone off, put it away. There's nothing more distracting for an employee to walk up to you, have something very important that they want to say to you, and your phone goes off and then you check your phone. That's not good listening. Provide safety, very simple. Be vulnerable. Leaders have to be vulnerable. You're making big decisions. You're putting your decisions out there for them to execute. Be vulnerable. Love and care, right? It's a weird word. You're supposed to love your employees. Like, that's not an HR thing. I can't love my employees. You have to love your employees. You have to be part of that team. These are very important things. Coach. We spend less time coaching. We have to coach more. And what does a coach actually do? I remember as a young boy when I played soccer, if I hurt myself, the coach ran onto the field to see how I was doing. We can't just check our list and say, who's their replacement? See how they're doing. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. We need leaders to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Having someone ask you for a raise and you having to say no is being uncomfortable. Get comfortable with that as much as you can. Turn hope into trust. Every single associate that works in your organization hopes that this is going to be a great job. They hope they're going to be taken care of. They hope that this is going to be one of the best experiences of their life. And it's our job as leaders to make sure that we turn that hope into trust. I trust this is going to be a great job and it's going to be a great day. You're leading personalities. You're not leading people. You're leading personalities. Every single person has a different personality. You have to learn to lead personalities. Recognize how many of us in the room give out Employee of the Month, Employee of the Year, all these great awards. And we pat ourselves on the back because we recognize them. But look at the way we recognize them sometimes. We give them a parking spot outside and we say, enjoy the parking spot. Or actually worse, we bring them in a room, slap them against the wall, hand them a certificate and a check and say, you just won the Employee of the Month. That's not recognizing. None of us want to be recognized with a plaque against a white wall on a picture. We actually want to be recognized, celebrated. So we should celebrate people. We'll never know how important it is to them to actually win something. Train them, empower them, cultivate the next layer of leaders. And the last one I have written here is it's our job as leaders to understand that we have the ability to change the trajectory of somebody's life. That's really heavy, but we have the ability to change the trajectory of somebody's life. On the flip side, why are these so hard? Because there's no deadline, there's no punishment, and there's no accountability. Every leader out there, if you never recognized anybody, okay, but you don't do it sometimes because there's no deadline, there's no punishment, no accountability. These things on this list need to have those. What does the guest-facing team need? They need to have these things, right? When they see those logos, they need to understand that they're the most important people in the organization. It's not the CEO. I hate to say it. And the reason why is because if the CEO doesn't show up for work one day, the organization will run. But if that frontline team doesn't show up for work one day, everybody's dead. Again, I go back to my restaurant story. If the line cooks and the servers don't show up, who's doing the job? The general manager, and he or she cannot do all of it. The frontline team is the ones who react to the word fine, right? All of us are, whether you're in sales or not, all of us have some way where the guest says to us, I'm fine. Fine. Fine's not a good word. Fine means do something for me that's better. It's the frontline team that can fix the fine. They're the ones that form an emotional connection with the guest. For those of us that watch TV, there's millions of commercials, and all they're trying to do is form an emotional connection with us through their commercials. I feel comfortable using that business. That's why you see them being done that way. But it's the group of frontline groups that actually form those emotional connections. And believe it or not, they're the ones that move the economics of a company. And I'll prove this to you right here. I'm in the South, so Chick-fil-A, right? I understand Chick-fil-A very well, but all of us can understand McDonald's. So if you've never been to a Chick-fil-A, I ask you to go to a Chick-fil-A. How is it that the employees move the actual economics at Chick-fil-A? Chick-fil-A does a wonderful job with customer service. And I hope if anybody's watching this from McDonald's, please do not take any of this the wrong way, but let the story be told. We wrap ourselves around the Chick-fil-A building 3 times for a chicken biscuit sandwich in the morning because we're waiting for that young kid to say to us, my pleasure, right? And when we get to the drive-thru and they give us the bag, we don't even look inside of it. We actually just take it for granted that it's right. McDonald's slightly different. We get to that end of that drive-through line and we may get great service from the gentleman or the young person that's in the box, but we still kind of open the bag at times to see how is it, did they get it wrong? Chick-fil-A has formed an emotional connection with us because of those things that they have taught, because of that culture. So if I asked you a question based on what you know about Chick-fil-A and what you know about McDonald's, do you think that the breakfast sandwich from Chick-fil-A is healthier for you than McDonald's? I think based on the emotional connection, I know it's a trick question. Most of us will say, yes, it is. The truth about it is it's not. We pay $1 more, 70 calories more, and 9 grams of fat more. We pay to eat that sandwich because of the emotional connection that the frontline team made with us. And the beauty about it is the people in Chick-fil-A understand that it's that organization that works inside Chick-fil-A, not inside Chick-fil-A corporate, that allows them to actually do that. So they do move the economics based on the service that they give. So let us jump into finally the two-way coaching. I know you've been waiting and waiting and waiting for me to start talking about that. Two-way coaching is very simple, but I can't talk about it unless leaders have a respect for the frontline team, and the frontline team really feels comfortable talking, because we've created a culture of love and care. We need to look past the task of the completion, right? That's how you get to two-way coaching. The incorrect approach to two-way coaching is very simple. A manager gives you a task, you send the employee on their way. The employee comes back, the manager says, nope, that wasn't done correctly, try again. The employee goes back out, does the task, comes back and says, thank you for completing, next. There was no coaching involved. Nobody learned anything. There was no conversation. None of that even happened. There was no trust. There was no communication. A successful approach to two-way coaching is that the leader needs to give the actual employee a task with targets, deadlines, completions, the actual nuts and bolts of what it is that they're looking for. Along the way, the person doing the task must feel comfortable asking questions to avoid any confusion, right? And that only happens because you have actually created an environment where the leaders and the department head level or underneath that feel comfortable talking to each other, which is what we talked about in the beginning. There's steady communication, always a steady communication, weekly update meetings of how we're doing. There's open dialogue. The employee cannot feel like, hey, I hit a roadblock and I'm too embarrassed to go talk about it. They must be able to speak and have open dialogue about the speed bumps that they're having. Talk about those victories. The leader gives feedback and advice and encouragement. There's no judgment, right? All the way till the end, all the way through completion, there's a two-sided conversation, right? And when I talk about this a little bit more, here is the beauty of the two-way communication, because both sides get something out of it. Number one, the leader, the task gets completed, right? Check the box, the task is completed. But what the associate gets is the experience behind actually the task completion. The leader earns the satisfaction of mentoring somebody. You don't just get to say you're a mentor, you earn becoming a mentor. Just because you have more tenure doesn't mean you're a mentor. But the associate earns the satisfaction of learning. The leader gets to collaborate and delegate. The associate gets a true sense of involvement, right? It's great to be called on to go do something, some task, right? Your chest is poked out like, yes, I get to be involved in this. The leader earns development of team members, right? The associate earns skill enhancement. That's two sides. The receipt of steady feedback. Leaders, a lot of times you sit in rooms, you don't know exactly what's going on. Having the two-way coaching allows you to hear how things are going. The associate gets to give feedback in a safe environment. They're learning ways to improve on processes, while the associates actually get a peek into the company processes. Leaders earn trust and confidence in their team. Associates get to be felt as if they were trusted. And then the last four are common. They both get team unity, they both earn loyalty, they both have personal success, and they both have team success. So the key in two-way coaching is both sides are learning from each other. It's not a one-sided way of doing business. This is a very simple, silly, I love pictures, but here's what happens typically. Here's the playbook by the coach. The team's not doing a good job. The players get a little bit risky and say, let me go talk to the coach about what we should really be doing. The coach gets grumpy, like you see Urban Meyer there in the bottom left. And what ends up happening? They lose because the coach didn't take the advice of the team that's actually doing the work. Second scenario, same exact thing. Coach comes out with a game plan. They end up losing. Tom Brady goes over to his coach and says, hey, coach, I'm living this world right here. This is what's really happening out there. Let's do this. They gather their courage. They sit down with the coach and say, we can do this. And guess what happens? They win. Two-way coaching, right? This coach is telling them what to do. They say, let's try it a different way. They both believe in each other and the world goes forward. I want to move, because we're running out of time here, into power differentials. Power differentials, the difference in power between persons and positions of authority. There's your definition, right? Power differentials. How do you get past power differentials? Most leaders will tell you, well, these are the things I'm going to do to defeat power differentials. I'm going to make them like me more. I'm going to be a leader of the people. I'm going to do more team building. I'm going to have happy hour. I'm going to bring in donuts and buy lunch. I'm going to listen, but I'm still going to do what I want. I'm going to write everything down that they say, but I'm still going to do what I want. I'm not going to send them emails on the weekends. I'm going to leave them alone, but only if it's super important. And a lot of people feel like that's what makes them a great leader. But guess what? It's not, right? That's not how you become a great leader. That's not how you get to be loved. These are the things that we talked about in the beginning. Here's how you get loved. You recognize all of these things. If you recognize all of these things, that's where the two-way coaching can really come into play, because that frontline team needs to feel comfortable to go talk to you. The biggest question I can ask you, the most important question I can ask you, and this is not out of my mouth, I read this somewhere else, is the bar for overcoming power differentials. If you feel like there is a gap between your leadership and how the frontline team perceives you as a leader, ask yourself one simple question. If I left, would people follow me? Because if they do say, yes, we would follow you, it's because they believe what you believe. They believe in your leadership and they would follow you anywhere. If you ask yourself, I don't know if people would follow me, then you're probably not building an environment there where that two-way coaching is happening, where people feel comfortable talking to you. You don't want to be the leader that when you say, hey, unfortunately I have to resign, the whole place is going, thank God he or she is leaving. We don't want that, right? So where I want to end this presentation with you is I want to share with you the same 6 logos that I shared with you in the beginning. And I hope at this point you see those 6 a little bit differently than you see before, right? We want to make sure that we all understand that it's the leaders and the frontline team see these differently, right? But if we can galvanize and we can make sure that the one thing that we do is we realize that we are a band of brothers and sisters, that's when you get that two-way coaching. That's when you get that level of comfortability between everybody. Because like I said, when you go to Disney, they're not applauding Walt. They're applauding the guy in the goofy suit. But there's 2 sides. One is the execution side and the other is the vision side. We want to make sure that we get to both of those. So I thank you everybody for your time. It was great to be a part of this. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gautam. Let's take one audience question real briefly. And that is, growth mindset change takes time. How can we create an environment where things are occurring to help our workspace?
I would tell you a lot of this, Eric, in my opinion, starts very much at the beginning. I think the mindset change has to start way in the beginning, even as far back as the interview process. I think it's important that you build a culture. And I know that there's going to be somebody who speaks about culture later, but once you have a culture, when you're inviting people into your environment, it starts right there, asking the right questions, making sure that they want to be part of the environment and the culture that you've created. Having that galvanized early on versus changing it along the way becomes very difficult. So again, it's what does the orientation look like? What does the interview process look like? What does the welcome look like? And once you have that, then you can start creating that open space and that open dialogue between everybody where there's a comfort level. People say they have open door policies. That's just a fancy word. We have to actually create those open door policies.
Thank you again for that incredible keynote. And I want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event.